like I said, Bob's coming late. He is coming, and then we'll see if John's comes in. We'll catch him up.
Is Lynn not coming?
Lynn's not coming.
Okay.
Lynn has another meeting, so she's not coming. And Bob, like I said, is going to be late. Okay, so we'll start the meeting now. Anything, well, public comments? I don't see anybody except the usual people. We'll pick up things later. Corrections to the agenda. The only thing I was going to add, and there won't be any substantive talk about it, but the last minutes we had talked about re-putting the 5-year plan on old business, and I forgot to do that. And so I do have just some information I'd like to share about that. Any other corrections to the agenda?
Yes, Bruce, the last meeting, and you have under old business for the agenda, review criteria for land preservation, and the last meeting we voted on criteria for that.
Yeah,
I want to discuss the name of what we're going to call those things.
Right, and just since I wasn't at the meeting, I thought go over, that I totally support what the decision was, but just to go over it. But a good idea with that.
And also I had a question under properties for consideration, second bullet. Is Pyle's property on map 41 or 42?
41. 41.
That's okay. It says 42, so that.
On map 42. Oh, 41 dash, okay. I got you. Yeah, there's two, it's listed correctly and no. The Pyle's property is 41 too?
It is on map 41. I forget
Okay.
the number, 102 or 120 or something.
Yeah.
I didn't print out page 2.
Okay, so that's 41. Okay. And minutes from the October meeting. Is that right? No, you guys met
Yes, it was November 24th.
November. So that's the November meeting. People read over the minutes.
Nice job, Peggy.
I know. Really
Meeting.
wonderful, Peggy. Yeah. Okay, a motion to accept.
So move.
Great. Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Any noes?
aye.
Okay. So for the chair, I have a bunch of things. This is my first meeting in about 3 months. And the first is, and I've talked with a couple of people, but I am stepping down from the chair, and we'll stay in till the next kind of turnover. But I'd like to stay on the committee and remain involved at least in the stuff that Fred's doing and get some of those booklets done, et cetera. But both for medical reasons and just needing a break, I'm going to step down. So I'm hoping that we can find someone from the committee to take that on at least temporarily, and maybe we'll look for a longer term solution. Again, I'll be here through June or July. But I would like to step down, and my experience is if I don't set a time, that'll go on into next year. It's a very good year to pick it. Well, who knows what's going to happen, but right now we have 4 properties that we're really looking at, and it's not clear that 2 of them are going to be ready next year even, so it'll be an easy year to sort of slide into it. The 5-year plan, just a comment on a couple of things. I I went on the Mass website and looked for grants, and anybody else is welcome to do it. Hillary had said there was a grant for small towns who were writing a 5-year plan. There is a grant for people who are renewing their plans. Unfortunately, that's not us. And I can't find any grants for writing a 5-year plan. So the question will be, and again, this will be on the agenda for next time around, but I know you sent a list out, Denny, of people who might do it. What is the cost going to be? I think everyone's in agreement at this point that we need somebody who's going to help us write this thing. We have a subcommittee, that's Fred, Lynn, and I, who are willing to work on this. We have a $1,500 budget, and that goes over 2 years. So if we could get this going, that's $3,000. I don't know if that's enough to do it, or we'll have to figure out where to get money. Do you know, Denny, with how much this is likely to?
I can see 5,000,
Yeah.
just guessing. And I'll also speak before I have authority to speak, but if you get a proposal and it looks like something you want to proceed with, there's probably a way we can tap the WCT treasury for some of that.
Oh,
And so, the idea is to get it going. We would appreciate you having a 5-year plan. So,
right. Yeah, the big advantage, as we talked about before, is there actually is now some federal money available. And I think any big projects we're doing right now, we're still taking land that I think is very valuable land, but it costs the town nothing and putting it in conservation. But I think if we had the 5-year plan in place, when something comes up, we can help the WCT, or they can help us, however you want to frame it, make a purchase in there. As much as things are getting tighter, there still is some land out there.
well, we did the Pinto property that way.
Right.
And, so you ended up with a fee and we ended up with a CR, and I think it's working out great. So
Right. And Clover is partly,
Clover is partly that way too.
yeah. So it's worth doing, and I'm willing to be a part of the committee, but I think maybe if we can talk Denny and figure, because I think if we time this right, we can come up with $3,000. The one downside to that is if there is a property, say the agri property that we decide to get, that money is there for an appraisal to start getting, and we're using our funds for this. On the other hand, I think it is worth doing. Just a couple of other quick things. Fred pointed out that the most recent, and on the wonderful map that you put out, Denny, the 210, 29, and 201 were not registered. So I did contact
right.
Nancy Vale. She has corrected that. It's not going to show up. She warned me because of COVID and other things. But it's in there. It is registered now. It wasn't after the town meeting. So we're good with that.
Before Mary Doucette, our AmeriCorps person, gets out, we're going to update the map, and I've got a note to take care of those 3 parcels.
Great.
And
Again, what are those 3 parcels?
I'm sorry, they are 210, 29, and 201 on
map 35.
35. And the last thing, I want to thank people for giving me some feedback on the 2020 information summary that I sent into the town that has been done. So I appreciate the input. Okay, anything, Tom, for you? That's it for me.
No, nothing special from here.
Okay. Property management, Fred?
Well, I'm happy to report that the annual inspections are finished. You might be interested to know that we have placed, or at least the Open Space Committee over some time, I guess, has placed 83 parcels under conservation. And that totals 143 and a half acres approximately, of which about half are upland and half lowland. I was
That's great.
surprised.
That's a
what it
great,
added up to.
that's a great reminder, Fred.
Yeah,
Mm.
And Fred, how many parcels over what period?
well, I don't know when the first parcels were created, but there are at present, as of this past year, 83 parcels.
83 parcels under ComsCon protection, basically.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
And 143 and a half acres of that.
Mm.
It adds up to.
And for the inspections,
For the inspections, generally, everything looks good. There's some places where there was trash, places where there've been trash before, there's been trash again, which I picked up some. One interesting thing was 2 beach buggy tires on the property next to the sand pit, stacked neatly back in the woods, which I thought was rather curious.
yeah.
Mm.
That area is frequently, sadly, used for, old surfboards and all kinds of things. Let me turn this off.
I'm going to put together a report to Doug with the things I've noted, just in case he doesn't look at the forms that we fill out in the notebooks. One of the things I'm going to suggest, and I hope you'll agree that this is a good idea, is that we need some signage on some of these properties, particularly the new ones.
Right.
We need to indicate where the parcels begin and end, and if there's access points, I think we especially need signs there. And there's some properties where there's a number of social trails, plus one that I think is the main trail in the property. This is particularly over at Dunham Pond. There's a property which has a nice loop trail, but then there's other trails that go off to private properties. And there, I think signs at those points, key points like that, would be very useful, so people know when they're on conservation and when they aren't.
Where is
Another
Dunham's
property,
Pond?
another piece of property is the new one that we have up near the Audubon on Hatches Creek, where the property is right up to somebody's yard, and you don't know where the property ends and where the yard ends. So I think there's places like that. We need some signs.
Two questions, Fred. Where is Dunham's Pond?
Did I say Donna's Pond? I mean the cove over here, Drummer's Cove. Did I say?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
On
All right.
Drummer's Cove.
Yeah. Oh, I know where you mean. Okay. And as far as locating your bounds, I'd be happy to take our AmeriCorps person out with her GPS, and we can find pretty darn close where they are. I don't know the AmeriCorps member who's working with Conservation Commission, but we can even train her or whatever. But we can find those bounds for you pretty easily, or at least an approximation of them.
Yeah.
yeah. The other, I guess I have mixed feelings about the signs, Fred. Any of the trails that we have that we're doing official trails with, I think should be marked. And I know like Fisher Goes Out, I put a couple up in the area by Pilgrim Springs there, because I thought it was confusing. But for some things like the Audubon, I'm not sure we'd want to encourage people to go in there. I think if they find their way, that's fine. Is my feeling about it. But But in terms of, so it's great if the AmeriCorps person we can put stakes or whatever we need to do to kind of find where it is. The other big thing, do you use Oliver, Fred?
Yeah, I can use Oliver, but somebody out walking is going to have that information.
Right,
on
right,
Oliver. I'm thinking about
Well-
people who.
right. No, I hear
walk
you.
out there. Yeah,
What we do on that, Fred, is that we indicate all of our corners with GPS readings, and then can go into the field with a handheld GPS and get in the right spot. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a real reasonable way to approach it. That way we know where they are, but we're not necessarily,
but
we don't
you,
have to use the signs per se with them.
Well, Fred, were you suggesting that we mark, especially on trails that end at a private property, that at the end point, we
Yeah.
might somehow indicate that you are now leaving public land or
Mhm.
Exactly.
to
Oh.
protect the abutters,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
as
idea.
opposed to
That's a good point.
directing people down that path?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a very good idea.
yeah. Okay. Is that something people want to vote on, or we can, I think it's a real reasonable idea. And I know I've probably wandered onto private property myself with, in the walks around with it. So I think that part, that really makes sense. I also think though, the GPS for locating, for the inspections themselves, that, that's as helpful as anything. You go in and you know where the markers are. Okay, but I take a step back. I still, to protect private property and to mark this, I think makes sense. Like I said, the Audubon property, for instance, I wouldn't necessarily, that path that goes in there is pretty narrow, and I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to go. It's town property. We want to inspect it. But that's my feeling in terms of.
Well, the other thing is, this is not like the Conservation Trust properties that have designated trails and, recreational use and things like that. I mean, this is more or less, protected from development or whatever. But I can understand the need to sort of indicate where the property ends if you're going to end up on somebody's backyard or whatever.
Right. I mean, the trails, some of the trails, like the Bayberry Trail, is mainly on town land, actually. And that's a problem in terms of the first house there. So it does make sense for us to be involved with that as well. And I think your point's well taken, Fred. You hear what I'm saying. I think there's a difference between sort of encouraging people into places where there isn't a trail versus I do hear you guys setting some.
I was mentioning the property up at Audubon mainly from the standpoint that when I was up on it, I noticed that there was no indication of where the budding property ended.
Right.
And the conservation land began.
And there's definitely some extension of the private property into our property. In fact, there's a dog, or was, last time I was out there, which is probably last year.
It's still there. It's still
Yeah.
there.
And I don't think it's active, the electric fence that is clearly on our property. That was reported, which is another issue, how active Conscom has been with this stuff. Okay, is that,
Are
so,
we making a motion?
well,
Bruce?
to the motion.
Bruce?
Hey, John.
Yeah, I just following up, I don't think it's a bad idea to post at our property lines, not just to warn people that they might be leaving our property, but also to discourage abutters from encroaching onto our property. I mean, which is a problem.
Right.
And it's, sort of, oh, this is public property, so I can just sort of incorporated into my property. And then we have, it's easier to deal with the problem if there's a stake there and it's obvious they're encroaching, rather than, well, I thought this was my property. Why are you making me take my shed off now? I've had that shed for years, et cetera, et cetera. So I do not think it's a bad idea, not
Yeah.
just in terms of,
Yeah, I support that. I support that comment.
Yeah, and I think it's a nice way to do it, John. In other words, you're saying, okay, to people who would walk in, this is private property, stay off. I think that gives the same message, to the private property people without getting into direct conflict with them. I think it's a way to both give them that message and for people who are coming in to say, yeah, this is where the boundary is. So concretely though, were you thinking about a specific kind of sign to put up there, Fred?
Well, there's already signs on some conservation property, not Wellfleet Conservation Trust, but just the town properties. For example, well, there's several of them. I've seen them. So
But you're not talking about the black arrows.
no, I'm talking
No.
about
Ones that go this way?
they're square signs that are put up like a triangle, and
Okay.
they have Conservation Commission.
Okay, well,
Doug has
that's
a-
easy. I'm not sure that completely, that just said, that doesn't say, you're entering private property. I'm not sure John Cumler's point about that will work as well with that. Any other thoughts on this?
Well, before we issue any proclamations here, does this have to be cleared through CONSCOM or?
It's a good point,
Or is this a recommendation that,
Yeah,
right?
That would, yeah, I was thinking as a recommendation to CONSCOM.
okay.
Okay. So the things that we can do, and I don't think we need to vote on, are the GPS coordinates you can do. I still think, I'll mention again, for those, maybe everybody uses Oliver, but if you don't, it's really worth doing. And because if you put on the satellite photo with the area that's the boundary area of the lot, you can a lot of times see better than going out there where exactly the infringement is, et cetera. So I just mentioned that's another way to do it, but I think with the GPS, that's easy to do, and I don't think we need CONSCOM approval. For the sign do we need a motion for that to make a recommendation, or?
You have your little diamond shaped signs.
Right,
And I
Right.
think it's just generally accepted that those things will show up. I think you can go ahead and do it.
For example, there's a couple places where it appears that abutting properties, not necessarily immediately abutting, but places where people have piled brush that they've cut perhaps on their property and wanted to get rid of and tossed it across the road onto conservation property. Now, if there was a sign there and this is conservation land, town conservation land, maybe they'd think twice about it doing it. If not, then they know better. So
no, I hear it. I mean, that certainly would be easy enough. So I think as a recommendation, again, is that a vote people want to take? Is there anybody else has any thoughts about this? Okay, should we make that recommendation to CONSCOM? Somebody want to form a motion?
I move that we make a recommendation to CONSCOM that we mark town properties or properties under their jurisdiction with signage.
can I talk to this, Bruce?
Yep.
CONSCOM's got a lot on its plate. And we want this done rather than have it pushed onto another desk and hopes that some other desk will do it. If we can have access to an AmeriCorps person, and, apparently we've got the technology to get out there and find out where our boundaries are. If we can do it, or we can get an AmeriCorps person to do it through our committee, it'll happen. If we send it to ComsCon, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll go on Doug's desk, maybe
Right.
AmeriCorps out of that. But why would we not just do it ourselves? If there's a good reason why we're not doing it ourselves, let me know, but I just don't see it.
No.
Well-
Well, I hear what you're saying, John, and I think that makes, in fact, I'm happy to go out there. This is the stuff that I enjoy doing and I just would like to get a thumbs up from CONSCOM in terms of what we're doing. It's there that we may have made recommendations for those properties to go into CONSCOM care. They're in CONSCOM care now. I'm happy to take it on. I'm sure you are, Fred, you suggested
Yes.
it. And other people who may want to go. I mean, that would be a fun project. But I would like to get a thumbs up from CONSCOM that they're in agreement with what we're doing. Just
Well,
because
Peggy, maybe you'd like to change your motion to state that we would recommend that the Open Space Committee look at the properties we're inspecting for CONSCOM and to place appropriate signage or something like that. That makes sense.
Second,
Yes, I would amend my motion to what Tom said.
Okay,
So we will look at CONSCOM properties, and I got it halfway written down. And provide appropriate signage.
okay. Is that good enough for people?
And the appropriate signage, I guess we don't have to spell
Bound-
out.
yeah,
I mean, we have
boundaries.
those triangular signs and that kind of thing, so maybe. All right.
So it's actually to mark the boundaries and provide.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? All right. Anybody
Aye.
opposed? All right. Okay, trail guides. Lynn is not here, nor is Bob. He was going to come later.
No, Bob's here,
Oh, he is here now. I'm sorry.
There he is.
but
Bob,
he's
you're
muted.
Oh. You want to unmute, Bob?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm here.
Um, Hi, Bob.
Hi.
So we're talking about the trail guides. Do you have any input? Lynn is not here today.
Yes.
Um,
I have some trail guides to bring up to the elementary school, but that's all that I know of the trail guides.
Okay. There have been some changes made with the trails out by Fox Island and Pilgrim Springs that I think are really nice that go along. Denny's been working on that. What other, the Clover property, anything else, Danny?
There aren't any, there are no revisions to the extent that there is in Pilgrim Springs. And on Pilgrim Springs, I'd appreciate you guys taking a look at that. And if you have any problems, please let us know. We're still developing our format, our presentation format, but the idea that we're showing the trails that are there is what we're trying to do. So
Okay.
I know the green comes across rather stunningly, but when it's in black and white, it's a whole lot more palatable, restive.
Okay, the elementary school, Bob?
Okay, I spoke with Mary Beth Rodman, who is very enthusiastic. This year, we cannot go into the elementary school and they are not going out. So we can't do anything. Nobody can go in and they're not taking any class trips. So we can't really do anything like we've done in past years. She suggested that we might want to do something virtually. I don't feel competent to do something virtually, but nor do I have really good ideas about that. But if the people think it's important and want to work on it, I'd be glad to work on it with them. So that's something for us to discuss now, I think. The other thing is that I will not be staying on the Open Space Committee after this year, after June, when my term is up, or when we have to say we'd like to be reappointed. So this might be a transition for somebody else to be doing it. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Well, to say, how many years have you been on the committee, Bob?
I don't know, a long, long time, about 15. When did you come on, Bruce?
I was trying to think too, probably maybe 12 years ago, 11 or 12.
So I must be about 15 to 18 years, I guess,
Yeah.
17 years, probably, something like that.
Hmm. Well, you better stay for another 3 or 4, Bob, at least.
Yeah.
Well,
Any,
I am not
Hmm.
able really to take kids on walks anymore.
Hmm.
And I have trouble with writing things, but I'm not in a rush to leave. But if you find anybody who would be good, I will go immediately. And so I can be flexible about this. And I'm certainly always, to me, this school program has been very close to my heart. And I think it is important, but I don't know what the rest of you think. Nowadays, I feel even more important since everybody is so hooked into screens and into quick movements. And I think that we need what we've been emphasizing in our program, more moments of reflection and quiet and looking at things and doing things outside. So that's just part of my enthusiasm for this program.
yeah, I really think it's been wonderful what you've done, Bob. And I know the Conservation Trust is also actively involved in this.
Yeah,
But I do really think it's something that the town should, that our committee should remain involved with if there's anybody who has an interest in it. If not, when we recruit, we can see whether someone would be interested in taking it over. But I really have appreciated, because you've done a lot of work and with the school to get this going. And I think it's really part of our mandate to do the education. So.
well, it is mandated to do education. And the reason I thought of the elementary school was, of course, because kids are open to activities and I like kids, but also because their parents are often people who are too busy to go to town meetings and to learn about things. And part of the reason was to try to reach parents through their kids. And it is something of a delicate relationship because you have to really work well with the teachers. And I've been pleased just in the last 3 years, we've really made great strides in having 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, 2 trips and lessons set up for everybody. So they're not deprived of natural experiences in Wellfleet, that's true. But I think we do something important and special.
Okay. This is not something we have to decide right now. You're
No.
going to be around for a while, but people would think about it, because I do think it would be great for our committee to, someone in the committee to continue what Bob's been doing and work with the Conservation Trust to make sure we get these kids involved. And
But Denny has been an integral part of this.
Yeah.
And knows very much what we do and has done most of it, a lot of it himself, done the whole map reading
I
portion.
be lost without Denny's maps, but but I do, and I'm sure Conservation Trust could do this. But I think it would be nice if we had a representative, and you've been very active with it, Bob. So the other thing I just wanted for you and John Kumler, because you're coming in late, is that I'm also stepping down as chair. So I'd like to remain with the committee, but come the end of June or whenever we sign on again, I'm happy to be a vice chair to work with, whoever wants to take it. I have lots of information I'm happy to share,
No.
but I don't want to But that's it. So anyways, for people to think about that as well.
Bruce?
John,
Yeah, I just want to, before this disappears, speak against doing something, a Zoom or online school program. From our point of view, I think it undermines what we really want, is to get kids out into nature. We're not, I think we will just, we'll create the wrong image. And I think also kids will not get the right, what we want them to get out of it by a Zoom meeting. So I would prefer that we wait until we can actually get kids out of the classroom, you know, into actual nature, rather than try to do something with Zoom. I'm just addressing Bob's earlier point.
right. The one concern, the only concern I have with that is the school, as I'm hearing it, is asking for it. And if the teachers, and they, right, am I hearing that right, Bob?
Not really. I mean,
No,
Mary Beth Rodman said this would be a possibility. I wanted to talk about it with you guys first, but then I would want to see if the teachers themselves were agreeable to this. So it's not that they're asking for it, but she brought up that possibility. And the only reason I can see, I agree with John for the most part. However, if we had something that we could do and get the trail guides into their hands this year, that we could do that. But I mean, if we also had something to accompany that, that might be something that would be of some value.
right.
I'm wondering if there are resources available. I know Mass Audubon has a lot of online curriculum material for science teachers, geared for different grade levels. And if it would be something as simple as, you know, here's a trail guide, and maybe a grade 3, it's a scavenger hunt. If you go to this property, can you identify 3 types of trees? You know, can you identify, you know, can you find some scat, you know, and explain. So it's something that the children can do with their families, that don't take a lot of guidance from the teacher, but it is encouraging to get out into our properties and enjoy the outdoors.
What do you think about that, John? Oh, go ahead, Denny.
I'd remind you that you have the children's activities as part of the trail guide, and that's pretty neat.
Yes.
Trail guide, so.
Oh, thank you, Denny.
I think it, from my point of view, that really makes a lot of sense. And that is, we are doing what we need to do. We're not substituting Zoom for getting out there. This is just giving them some tools to get out on their own and to follow up with it. I think that's a great idea.
One of the problems with starting the program was that the teachers feel that there are so many demands on them that they don't really have any time to do anything extra. Now, so the only time that we've really met with kids has been after the big testing is over. Not that we couldn't do that again this year, but so one of the things is that it's been very important not to impinge upon the teachers and make increased demands on them. However, the 3 teachers now are all enthusiasts, I believe, and they would probably support doing something, but something as Peggy's idea, that was a very good one.
Does this need a vote, or can we table it and kind of see? It needs somebody else. Bob's not going to do the Zoom part of it. So is there anybody else who would be interested in putting something together that would bring them outside?
I can help somebody with that, or whatever you want to do.
And I can look to see what I can find available in addition to what's in the trail guides. But I'm wondering if, Bob, if it does make sense for you to talk to the teachers about this plan.
Yeah, I think I can first contact Mary Beth and then go to the teachers.
Meanwhile, I'm happy to work with Denny to see if we can, what we can pull together, some ideas. And again, I think it's very important that it not be a burden for the teacher, but the teacher is basically a pass-through,
Yeah.
suggesting,
The problem would be that it can't be a requirement.
yes, yeah. No homework, nothing the teacher needs to grade.
No, but I mean that the parents can't be
Yes.
required. So how many families will be willing to do it? So we have to make it, we don't want to make it that the kids are punished in any way if they
Right.
can't do it.
Right. So it's an opportunity, but it's not a mandate with, and it also, I don't think, at least the initiation of things would take very long. I mean,
No,
depends on what Peggy comes up with from Audubon, but, okay, so I'm going to suggest, why don't we move on and we'll look at this later. The WCT, I'd say one of the nicest things is that 18 plus acres along the Herring River is going to have a trail soon. And
wonderful.
that's just wonderful news. And the gift was just such a generous one. It's been terrific.
Yeah, that's-
We've got it sketched out on the ground and have to go to Conscom same night as you, Bruce, to see what the jurisdictional opinion is. I'm hoping they say, that's nice. And so, John, I'm looking at you. So,
Right.
I can't speak for other members,
oh, okay.
but don't let me not be able to respond to the fact that Bruce is coming to ComsCon on the properties we have. I just want to give Bruce a heads up. We've already got a letter objecting to that.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Objecting to my going or objecting
No
to?
objection to what you're asking.
Okay, so we're going to get to that. This is well before I heard that there were some objections, et cetera. I really looked at, I think we need to discuss two of the articles. And so I'll try to get there quickly. Anything else, Denny, on the Conservation Trust, Joanna?
We're starting to put together a laundry list of projects for a work day with AmeriCorps, and certainly would like to include all of the Conscom properties. I've alerted Hillary and Doug that we're trying to do that in probably April or May. And that's the time at which we'd put in the final Herring River Overlook trails too. So there are a few things that need to be done. Certainly on some town property, there are some steps that need to be replaced. And again, I've talked to Doug and Hillary about trying to do that. And Bruce, I think I copied you on that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Okay, for Friends of the Herring River, just to read very quickly, a note that was sent by Martha. We're still in the final throes of preparing Chapter 91 and Section 401 water quality certification applications to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. These should be submitted by the end of February, fingers crossed. I also spoke with Fred not too long ago, and we discussed trying to strengthen the partnership between Friends of the Herring River and Open Space. Excuse me. Perhaps there are some activities that Friends of the Herring River can help OSC with, particularly within the Herring River watershed. I'd be grateful if you could give this some thought, and perhaps we can discuss it sometime in the near future. Any thoughts on what she's requesting? Nothing jumps out at me in terms of the watershed, but look to the future. Housing partnership, John?
Not much to report. We're working on getting out information about the buy down program. Other than that, everything is just sort of moving very slowly.
CPC, Bob, and no new information, I assume.
We didn't have any meetings. We don't have a meeting until February, so no new meetings. Yeah, nothing to report.
Okay, and the NRAB?
Well, John, maybe you want to address this, but the harbor management plan that we've been working on for some time was presented by John to the Board of Selectmen. And John, I guess everyone seemed to be favorably looking at our final draft, or almost our final draft.
Well, we presented it to the board and they approved it as a draft. So if anyone had, I've gotten some useful comments. Robert Brennesel, John Portnoy, Helen Miranda Wilson gave me some comments. So if any of you have any comments and questions, please send them to me and we will consider them before we put a final version in concrete, as it were.
I think one of the things about this is that we tried to make an effort to make this a concise document with, you know, about 5 major headings, and not the previous reports have been huge tomes, which, you know, people kind of look at and say, oh my God. I mean, there's a lot of good, useful material. It's on our website and can be looked at, and, you know, history and all kinds of previous work that's been done. But this is meant to be a kind of a useful document that can be, you know, a tool to work with, I think. So anyway, that's where we are.
I really thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and, you know, I know that our mandate for the 5-year plan from the state has to include a lot more than was there, but it was very readable. I thought the points were well taken, and you know, I know Fred and Lynn have had a chance to read through. They are tomes. They are huge volumes, and some of that is absolutely mandated by the state. But boy, for me, this was, if we can Occam's razor and keep things simpler, I think it, anyway. Okay.
Bruce?
Yeah.
I read John Portnoy and Barbara Brennesal's comments, and I just hope that the committee think about them very seriously. I thought they were very good and useful comments to incorporate.
What word, do you want to talk about them, or?
No, I mean, I think John made some very good points, and I just hope that the committee will consider them seriously.
Take them seriously.
Okay. So the 5-year plan, just, it doesn't take a lot of time. People, the last time was 3 months ago now, but it was voted on the plan essentially that John Portnoy recommended, with the exception of the continue to educate, as people thought that was not directly related to the land, I assume.
It's Andy, still at the meeting?
No.
Okay, he'll call you.
But I think, you know, for me, I really thought that was a good decision. And I think it helps define, you know, in some of the past 5-year plans, in fact, there's a goal to save 50% of the land that is remaining, or something like that. It's like, what does that mean? I mean, that is, to me, that's just, it doesn't make any sense. I think we have with this, so if we go and look to protect some land, whether it's an acre or 41 acres, like out at Indian Neck, the question is, does it meet these criteria? So I just wanted to say I really appreciated the effort, and I think it's a good way to move forward, and even with the 5-year plan, hopefully we do that. Any other comments on that one? Okay, so
There was some discussion about what we should call it. And I wrote down a couple things. The way it was described in the emails that you had sent, one was a guideline for conserving land, one was priorities for land conservation, and the other was criteria for land. So I don't know if we want to come up with what these things are so that we can actually type a document that says at the top what it is, and these are the criteria that will guide or whatever we decide.
The state is going to require that you call it an OSRP, which is
Which
open
stands
space-
for,
Open Space and Recreation Plan.
Yeah, but this was just the, preserve threatened resources, especially in ACEZ land. The information we have, you guys have a much more rigorous and involved one. I don't think it's I'd rather not write requirement, Are you saying that has to be the open space plan, Denny? Otherwise I would.
Well, I'm saying that what you're working on is a state mandated, specifically called OSRP.
that's the 5-year plan though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I'm just talking about our 9 criteria
Oh, okay.
as.
Well, for what it's worth, the way I view those things, they are helpful guidelines when you have an opportunity to look at a specific parcel.
Right.
Most of the parcels are really an opportunity. And so then you have to evaluate whether it's worth going into.
Okay, no, that didn't answer, but I think guidelines, however, I don't, is a reasonable way to go with that. And we don't want to lock ourselves in, I would say. To talk about, so tomorrow I'm going to Conscom and I'm going to present articles well before the criticism, as in it's on the agenda for this meeting. I have had some second and third thoughts about the properties by Sewell's Gutter. And we don't even know right now, and Hillary didn't know when I was talking with her, whether the property by Hiawatha, and these are people who don't have it. I believe it's 234 and 235 on map 28. The other one is just a flashpoint in terms of access for shell fishermen, et cetera. And so I'm suggesting that we remove that, in part because the other area of Indian Neck that I would like to move forward with is an area that has almost 40 acres. It's marshland. I mean, what John and Tom and the committee have come up with in terms of plans for the harbor, really a big part of that is protect the marshes, protect the marshes. Well, you have a big, beautiful marsh up there that we ought to be protecting. And I know there have been issues with the shellfishing around access. What's that mean? If they mean walking out there, fine. I mean, driving cars over the marsh, that's something that we would not go along with, and it hasn't happened for quite a while. There was a fence that was up there that they took down. My concern with the Sewell's Gutter article is we're going to get into a real battle. It's a small amount of land, 235. It's not even clear that we can move forward with, because the Hiawatha, the quote town road, is actually on the neighbor's property. And so even at the time that I talked with Hillary, it's not clear that that is something we're going to be able to go forward with. Omaha Road is just, I mean, there are access issues, and the access issues really have to do with private property versus, but the town spent $1 million and was given $1 million to come up with those properties. And it is just, I think, something that, to speak personally, I'd rather not go forward with. I'm sorry that, what Hillary's thought is, hey, we can put this out there, and if we have to pull 135, then we just do that. I didn't think that through long term, because I think, we have a bit on our plates, and the biggest thing I'd like to do, I think those properties just south of Indian Neck is something we should go forward with. They're beautiful properties. They're 40 acres, and I'm afraid that if we're going to have problems even with those, but I feel like we can go down fighting, and we have a real strong reason to go forward with that. With the other one, I feel like Conscom can act. I understand we were called in because they're making a mess of the dune. And I understand that, and that was the motivation for this. Conscom has ability to set limits on that on their own. They don't need us to do this. And so I'm proposing, well, I'd throw that out for discussion first, but I would, in terms of presenting tomorrow, the other two, I feel very positive about presenting, even if we run into a buzzsaw. This one, I'm sorry that we even went along with it. So any comments on that?
Yes, I wanted to hear what John, if you were able to, excuse me, John Kumbler, if you were able to share the information with us about the letter that had been received. Does it address these properties or the ones further down on Indian Neck?
It basically addresses, I mean, it doesn't specify which ones. It addresses the larger issue, but I think Bruce is right. It's really after the Omaha piece of property. I don't want to go into specifics because I'm not sure whether I mean, it will be a public document once, but until then, I'm not comfortable sharing it at this point. I wanted to give everyone a heads up that there was.
Yeah, Danny goes on Facebook, and it also sent me, Ryan Curley had some concerns about this and was really saying, listen, this is something that we're planning to do. To say again, more simply, what I was saying is I really feel like those properties up by Indian Neck are worth going into conservation. When we look at the plan for the harbor, we're really talking about saving marshes. There's a beautiful marsh out there. Why would we not do that? So they can shoot me down on that and do it, but I feel like I'm fighting the good fight. The other one, I just think we're going to walk into a buzzsaw. It's a small amount of land, 135, it's not even clear, is something we could put in conservation anyway. And I'm sorry we brought it up, but I'd like to drop that one.
Bruce, on the properties which are on Chipman's Cove,
Yeah.
on the north end of Indian Neck, did you hear anything back from Nancy Civetta about
I
those?
did not. And, you know, some of that may be that, so John had heard some things. And so I said to Nancy, this is going to come before your committee, but I would, you know, if you have any thoughts on this, you know, please get back to me. You know, with the open meeting laws and with some of the others, you may not have felt comfortable. What I had heard before in some meetings we had, not specifically on this, was that, you know, there was some settlement that that property had been fenced off and it has not been used. And certainly when Fred and I went out and looked at it, no tire tracks, no, things looked really good. And so it's one that I would like to move forward with. Like I said, we can lose it. We have to get 2/3 of a vote, but so be it. I think it's 41 acres almost, and it's just a beautiful piece of property. It's the three properties I think are terrific. It does not affect access. You know, the shellfishermen walk down on the west side now, walk down that beach, and that's not going to change. There are two, both a WCT property to the north and one to the south. So anyway, I think we have some real reasons to move forward with that, and I'd like to. The other one, I just think is, I'm sorry that we put it in because it is, you know, we got a beehive already. That was our concern from day one. And if other people really want to move forward with this, I'll listen, but otherwise I just rather drop that and fight what I see as the good fight rather than the.
I would agree with that.
A request, if I may, I'm also a member of the Rights for Public Access Committee.
Right.
And we are meeting on Monday morning, I think. And I was going to raise with the members of that committee these three potential proposals. I would be very interested to hear ahead of time what you learn from CONSCOM tomorrow,
Right.
so I don't spin wheels on a unnecessary discussion. There are shellfish or people on RPAC, and so I was curious to hear, would have been curious to hear what they think, but I won't go ahead if it's not necessary.
Right. Yeah, and I think sometimes the objections to these things, my sense of this is that the objection is so that you guys are going to block it off. The reality of it is that the problems with access, from what I can see, and I've been to some of the meetings with Audubon, is because these things go private. This is not that the town owns these property, and we're not like last year, we put into conservation under CONSCOM care, a path that allows people to get out to that property by Pleasant Point. That path is there so that people can access the point, and that's the point. Here, one of the paths that goes out to Indian Neck, where everybody goes to do the clamming and is this piece of property. Our putting that in conservation protects that property from the town saying, Joe Jones is going to sell this to a builder or whatever. I mean, for me, we are not stopping access by putting this into conservation. And it depends on how you frame access. If you're saying we'd like to drive our trucks out there, not appropriate, but they don't right now with that property. It's used as a people park by the road and use that a place for access. And so anyway, I'm going on more. The real question for the committee is whether we voted yes for the Sewell's gutter to revoke that vote and say no, and I will pass that on before we even get up there.
All right.
Bruce?
Bruce,
Go ahead.
Yeah, Dan.
regarding Sewell's gutter, my interest or WCT's interest in getting that land in conservation is the protection of the Sewell's gutter itself. And I would say that I think if CONSCOM's going to do their job on protecting the perimeter lands of the harbor, I don't care whether it's in CONSCOM jurisdiction or not. It's those kayaks on the banking there that is really destroying the banking.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, and that's how we get called into this. And that's why we voted yes before. I also think that, with Omaha Road, Old Wharf is an example. That's under Conservation Trust. It's in conservation and people use it. The big difference, this is just going to be a real battle, I think. And, that the issue with Omaha Road, in my opinion, is that it's a private road. They've received verbal permission and there's a battle going on there. I just don't see that it makes sense for us to step into the battle. I hear what you're saying, Tenny, but the CONSCOM has the ability right now to step in and do this. And my concern is we have an opportunity that the marshes I'm not even talking about, because nobody's challenging that. But we have an opportunity really to save a large piece of property, those 3 acres. And, my concern is that this is the way that it's being presented on Facebook, is this is Indian Neck, so it includes everything. So at least if, we get rid of what is going to be a hot button issue, then, like I said, then we'll go forward. And then if we lose a vote, we lose a vote. But one of them I feel very good about. The other one I have trouble, and I think it's not in our interest to do it. Okay, any other thoughts before we vote?
Just,
I would,
just
I'd,
one more. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
I was gonna make a motion that we withdraw our approval of Sewell's Gutter property for the article in town meeting. So I don't know what the two lot numbers are, but those can be included in the motion.
234 and 235 on map 28.
28.
Okay,
Can I speak to the motion, Bruce?
Yeah, John.
Um, For strategic reasons, I think it may be wise to separate them because we don't want to lose the marsh because of the anger over the Omaha Beach area.
Right.
But I think I think we should think of this as we're separating these two and not abandon, not take this vote as well, we've given up that the possibility of going back to that. For several,
right.
one is, the reason I think we should separate is I think it's important to get the acres marshland protected. But I also think it's important for us to engage the battle around, public use and what conservation means, because the opposition to putting this in conservation is predicated around false assumptions that we need to engage. That conservation is not in opposition to use, it's in opposition to abuse. And that's why we feel it needs to be in conservation, to protect it from abuse, not protect it from use. It's an important conversation and an important battle we need to have. But I understand strategically we shouldn't have it right now because we may lose the other one in a spite action. So I want it clear when we're separating these and bringing the first one now.
Right.
That's-
I'm comfortable with that. I will have to say, John, I think my bet is that there's going to be a battle even with the other one. So
Oh,
we
I'm
have
sure of that.
for-
That's
for making our points known, just going forward with that. And like I say, that one, it's a really nice marsh. But I forget how you said it, John, but certainly use and not abuse.
Well,
Certainly,
that discussion needs to be brought forward in detail when the article was discussed at town meeting. That everyone needs to understand that exactly what John just said.
right.
Mhm.
Okay, so Tom made anything else? Do you have something, Fred, you want?
No, I was going to speak to something after, well, I'll second the motion, then we can go on with the other properties.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of withdrawing the article?
separating and then doing the first one first.
Oh, withdrawing it this year.
Right.
In other words, we have to, removing it from the 2021 town meeting. And, but, well, anyway, that's all that we're doing before Conscom tomorrow. I think we have enough
you've
to
got
fight,
'em-
John.
I think you've got them as separate articles right now anyhow.
Right.
Okay, anybody
Can we
else?
vote?
All right, all in
No, we
favor?
voted already.
No, vote. Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays? Okay, so that's 6-0 in favor of pulling it. Okay, anything else?
Should be 7-0.
Well, Lynn's on here.
1, 2,
No,
3,
no.
4,
Oh,
5.
then.
Okay. Did you have something else, Fred, on the other properties?
I just wanted to be sure that we point out that the present use of Indian Neck to access Chipman Coves is through lot on map 22, not on 28.
Right.
And when I first looked at these properties a year ago or whenever it was, I saw no evidence that there had been any driving on the marsh or upland south of map 22. In fact, there was a sign, a town sign that said, no vehicles beyond this point, which was to prevent people from driving south of lot 22. And I saw no evidence of any disturbance other than a path right at the mark between the high tide line and the marsh itself, where people walk along there. And maybe a few people walk down to the southern end of Chipman Cove over the marsh, but they haven't left any trails. So I don't know what they're afraid we're going to take away from them.
Well, we'll see tomorrow how much of this has to do with Sewell's Gutter and how much has to do with some of the other. It's a big piece of property, and it's been sitting this way for a long, long time. My understanding is in the past, there were some issues with car use, with overuse by shell fishermen. And what I hear rumored is that there are some shell fishermen who would like to more actively use that now. Again, I think John's presentation was, or thoughts about this were good. I mean, this isn't a kind of you can't use it. This is, you can't abuse the marsh. They're not abusing it now. It's really been, it sounds like the battles were fought some time ago, and all the evidence we saw when we went out, Fred, and I'm sure other people, was it has worked pretty well, so.
The battles were fought probably 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And Hillary will have vivid memories of them all.
Right.
And she will be proud of the fact that she got a change there.
Right.
So it's certainly in her mind.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on the other? Okay. Anything else at all before we sign off? Okay, so let me say again, I'm hoping someone in the committee will, I set a time limit for myself, just because if I don't, I know it's just going to go on, and I can really be involved in the kind of stuff here that I'd like to be involved with. And I feel like I put in, as you said, Bob, it's a lot of years it had it, and between my medical stuff and just, I don't know, the blood flow to the brain or something, I'm ready to say, all right, this is semi-retirement, and let's do some.
Well, I'm glad you're staying on the committee. I want to point out that you were recruited by our very first educational venture when Jan and I organized the celebration of open space for opening event for Preservation Hall.
No, I remember it well, Bob.
Certainly you have great knowledge that will be very useful to the committee
Almost done.
for many years.
And you'll be missed.
Well, thanks.
We'll see where things go. Again, if somebody has an interest in this, it's been, you've been CPC, the education, all, kinds of stuff that really has kept us going on those fronts. So
Well, thanks.
we'll miss you.
Thank you.
And, I'll leave it at that. Okay, anybody else, anything to say? Okay. So you're going to be around for a while anyway, Bob, and I hopefully will be around for, just the one comment I'd make with this. I'm saying this like it's a done deal if somebody says I want to be chair. I'm not hearing that, but if somebody does decide to,
Not hearing
or even finding a new person. What's happened with the select board is that they've been very reasonable. If we have someone else, and there are a couple names that have come up that might be interested in the committee, they have given us, on the whole, the benefit of the doubt with that. There's only one incident I can think of where someone got appointed before we knew anything about it. So we would assume that, that's going to continue. Any appointment obviously is dependent on the choice of the select board. And so I don't want to present this like we have more control over this than we do. On the other hand, they've been very reasonable with us so far. If we have somebody who's clearly a good candidate, they have been very quick to go along with that. So, anything else?
19 hours to go.
Yep.
Yeah,
Holding our breath.
but who's counting, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
For 3 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks and 6 days we've been counting.
It is amazing what he is trying to do to the environment in his last few hours.
Oh my God.
Just astounding.
Just going
Well,
out.
just think if we had another 4 years of it.
Oh my God. And we never get him out. We never, I mean, this is, you can see
Yeah.
what he's doing.
I definitely moved to Portugal.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness for Georgia
Yeah.
and for Black people in this country.
Hmm.
Yeah. And for honest people, I have to say, as much as, the Republicans on the whole, I think, should be ashamed of themselves. There are a number of people, particularly in states like Arizona and Georgia, and where there is no win for these people to stand up like they are. And they are. And again, I don't know if anybody saw the 60 Minutes last week, but they had an interview with the Secretary of State,
Oh, yeah.
and part of it was showing one of the complaints has been that the votes have been stolen, and they showed the whole clip that has been used. They showed the whole clip rather than the edited clip which has been used. And be down in a minute, Maddie. And basically they edited in such a way that it was believable that these votes were being, the whole, when you see the whole film, it is absolutely false. And they said, so Rudy Giuliani lied, and they both, there was a Secretary of State and another high official, said lied through his teeth, essentially. And so it's just, again, I think for our country to have some people from the other side to have a backbone and to, stand up and do the right thing. It just has been not
Well,
that.
the other thing that's interesting is that the Dominion Voting Machine Company is bringing some huge lawsuits.
Good.
1.9 billion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, as a person, now, let me start out by saying I'm not a Republican and have never been a Republican, but I grew up in a family of Republicans. My parents were diehard Republicans. My mother referred to herself as a Roosevelt Republican who believed in conservation and the environment and nature. My father is a little weird, but still, for him, my father, who was weird, Republicanism meant sensible government, low taxes, and honesty in government. And he always accused the Democrats of being, catering to the masses and not caring about honesty and integrity. And there was a little bit of truth to his narrative. It astounds me now that the Republican Party has jettisoned not just Lincoln, but Roosevelt and the concept of integrity in government. I mean, that in a sense, and I'm not a Republican, and I personally at this point would love to see that party disappear, but it saddens me to see what's become of what was once an honorable party in this country.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
And I think we should all be saddened by it.
I think we are.
Well, yeah, I mean, the conservative philosophy, whether you believe in it or not, is something that is a respectable point of view, but not when when you buy the lie. Anyway,
Anyway.
Should we adjourn the official?
Let's adjourn the
Right.
meeting.
Oh,
shall we?
okay.
official
Right.
meeting?
Officially adjourned. and we're
I don't think
gonna-
this is
We're going off
officially
on a-
recorded on Open Space Committee.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what's on the
right.
agenda as far as I know.
We're-
The
We're having
agenda's
our
over.
moment of sadness and reflection, but it should come after the adjourning. The points.
All right.
See you guys.
Okay, move to adjourn.
Okay.
Adjourn.
All right,
Up to adjourn,
Bye.
second,
Bye.
all right.
all in
Bye-bye.
favor.